The rain had soaked through every layer of her dress. By the time she realized the man she had traveled 2,000 miles to marry was never coming back. 23-year-old Eleanor Hayes stood alone beneath the wooden awning of a deserted general store, clutching a small brown suitcase against her chest while cold rain turned the frontier street into a river of mud. She had arrived that afternoon with a letter in her pocket, a name in her heart, and a promise that a new life waited for her in the West. Now the letter was wet, her hands were trembling, and every wagon that passed made her look up with desperate hope. None of them carried the man she had been promised. Eleanor had grown up believing that hard work could overcome almost anything. She had worked from sunrise until sunset on her family's small farm, saved every coin she could, and taught herself never to complain when life became difficult. When a letter arrived from a rancher named Samuel Whitmore proposing marriage, she believed perhaps her years of struggle were finally ending. He had written about a peaceful ranch, horses grazing beneath wide skies, and a home where they could build a family together. Eleanor had no illusions about the West being easy, but she believed she was traveling toward something honest. She sold what little she owned, packed 2 dresses, a Bible, some family photographs, and the small suitcase she now held tightly. But when she arrived in the frontier town of Red Creek, Samuel was nowhere near the station. A hotel clerk told her that he had left 2 days earlier, claiming he needed to handle an emergency at his ranch. Eleanor waited, then she waited longer. By sunset, people began disappearing from the streets. The rain grew heavier, and the cold wind swept between the wooden buildings. She asked for help at the saloon, but the men there laughed and told her she had probably been foolish enough to trust a stranger. One woman offered Eleanor a room for a single night, but the price was more than she had left. So Eleanor returned to the general store awning and stood there alone. She tried not to cry. She had promised herself she would never become helpless. Then a horse appeared through the rain. A tall, broad-shouldered rancher rode slowly down the muddy street wearing a black hat and a weathered leather coat. His name was Caleb Mercer. He was known around Red Creek as a quiet man who worked harder than anyone and spoke less than most. Caleb noticed Eleanor immediately. He saw the suitcase, the soaked dress, and the exhaustion she was desperately trying to hide. He stopped his horse beside her. "Miss, you shouldn't be standing out here." Eleanor lowered her eyes. "I'm waiting for someone." Caleb glanced down the empty street. "You've been waiting a long time." She swallowed. "I suppose I have." Caleb did not ask embarrassing questions. He simply climbed down from his horse, removed his coat, and placed it around her shoulders. "Come with me," he said. Eleanor hesitated. "I don't know you." Caleb nodded. "That's true. But you don't have to know me to know you're freezing." That simple kindness broke something inside her. She quietly picked up her suitcase and followed him into the storm. Caleb's ranch stood several miles outside Red Creek, surrounded by rolling hills, pine-covered slopes, and wide fields of golden grass. It was not a grand mansion, but it was sturdy, warm, and carefully maintained. Eleanor expected Caleb to ask questions the moment they arrived. Instead, he led her inside, started a fire, heated water, and placed a plate of hot food on the table. "Eat first," he said. "Answers can wait." Eleanor stared at the meal. She could not remember the last time someone had prepared food for her without expecting something in return. She ate slowly, tears appearing in her eyes as the warmth returned to her fingers. Caleb pretended not to notice. He gave her a clean dress that had belonged to his late sister and showed her a small guest room. The next morning, Eleanor woke before sunrise. She refused to remain idle. She found the kitchen, cleaned the stove, washed dishes, and began preparing breakfast. Caleb entered and stopped when he saw her kneading dough. "You don't have to work for your room," he said. Eleanor looked at him firmly. "I'm not working for the room. I'm working because I know how." Caleb smiled for the first time. "Then I suppose the ranch just gained something it didn't have yesterday." From that day forward, Eleanor worked harder than anyone expected. She helped with the garden, repaired torn clothing, cooked meals, gathered eggs, and even learned to ride horses. Caleb never treated her like a helpless woman who needed rescuing. He treated her like someone capable of building something. That respect slowly changed her. She began laughing again. Caleb began talking more. They discovered they both loved quiet mornings, strong coffee, and the sound of rain against the roof. But Eleanor still carried one unanswered question: why had Samuel abandoned her? Several weeks later, a letter finally arrived. Samuel had never intended to marry her. He had written the original proposal because he wanted someone to work on his distant property, but after receiving a better offer from another family, he simply disappeared. Eleanor read the letter twice before folding it carefully. She expected to feel broken. Instead, she felt strangely free. Caleb found her sitting on the porch. "Bad news?" he asked. Eleanor shook her head. "No, just an old promise finally ending." Caleb sat beside her without pressing for details. "You know," he said after a while, "you don't owe your future to a man who couldn't keep his word." Eleanor looked at him. "Then what do I owe it to?" Caleb smiled gently. "Yourself?" Those words stayed with her. Eleanor began saving money from the work she did at the ranch. Caleb insisted on paying her fairly, even when she protested. "If you work, you deserve to be paid," he told her. Eventually, she used her savings to buy a small flock of chickens and expanded the ranch garden into a profitable vegetable business. Caleb watched with quiet pride as she turned hardship into opportunity. One evening, while they stood beside the barn, Caleb said, "When you first arrived, you looked like someone who had lost everything." Eleanor smiled. "I thought I had. And now?" She looked across the ranch, then back at him. "Now I think I finally found something worth keeping." By morning, the storm had finally passed, leaving the frontier town washed clean beneath a pale golden sky. Clara stood outside the ranch house, holding her small suitcase. But for the first time, she no longer felt like an abandoned bride. She had worked hard since arriving, helping in the kitchen, caring for the horses, and learning the rancher's daily routines. She had expected pity, but Daniel had given her something far more valuable: respect. He never treated her like a helpless woman. Instead, he trusted her with responsibilities and encouraged her to build a new life with her own hands. Weeks passed, and Clara became an important part of the ranch. She woke before sunrise, worked beside the ranch hands, and slowly regained the confidence she had lost. Daniel admired her determination but never rushed her heart. Their friendship grew through small acts of kindness: a warm cup of coffee after a long morning, a quiet smile across the dinner table, and evenings spent repairing fences beneath the setting sun. One afternoon, Clara received a letter from the man who had abandoned her. He wanted her to return, claiming he had made a mistake. Daniel quietly handed her the letter and said, "The choice is yours. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it." Clara looked at the letter, then at the ranch that had become her home. She gently folded the paper and placed it into the fire. "I already made my choice," she whispered. "I'm staying." Daniel's eyes softened. "You're sure?" Clara smiled through tears. "For the first time in my life, I'm exactly where I want to be." Daniel reached for her hand, and she accepted it. Months later, Clara no longer introduced herself as the abandoned bride who had been left in the rain. She was a hard-working ranch woman, a trusted partner, and a beloved member of a family she had never expected to find. Sometimes life takes everything away only to lead you somewhere better. Clara came west searching for a husband, but she found something greater: dignity, friendship, love, and a home built not from promises, but from kindness. And as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, Daniel whispered, "You were..."
In the end, Eleanor's story is no longer really about the man who abandoned her. It's about what she built after he did. She arrived in the West believing her future depended on Samuel's promise. But through Caleb's kindness, her own hard work, and the independence she created, she discovered that her future belonged to her. She turned her savings into a small business, earned respect through her work, and eventually chose a home based on genuine kindness instead of empty promises. The most powerful part is that when Samuel returned, she didn't need revenge. She simply chose not to go back. Her decision showed that sometimes losing the wrong person is what finally gives you the freedom to find the right life. If this story moved you, hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories.
Never meant to face the storm alone. The Clara smiled. This time, she believed him.